This is not the Avengers 2 panel, though. Okay.
Or is it?
Or is it? And they recast it very poorly. Yeah. Because that's how one gets right through. Destroys the universe. Spoiler! Let's just make a reference to Christ.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our panel this afternoon. My name is Michele Brittany. I'm the West Coast leading school correspondent this afternoon for this panel, but also for the con as well. I want to introduce you to each one of our panel guests who have a lot of experience sitting up here this afternoon. So to my left, I have Neil Edmund, who has written for History and Discovery Channel's Animal Planet, and currently writing and producing 2 films, Planet of the Veins and Light and Darkness. He's also written a wonderful novel called A Tale of Red Riding-Werewolf Huntress. If you haven't read it, next to him is Mairghread Scott. She is no stranger to animation. She writes for Transformer Prime, G.I. Joe Renegades, and is it Kaijudo? Rise of the Duel. Yeah. Okay, and then next to her we have, of course, Marv Wolfman.
Who stumbled in on it? We don't know why he's here. That's pretending on it.
And he's written 1 or 2 comics over, I don't know, the last couple of years. But he's actually very well known in comics and films. He's written for Tomb of Dracula, New Teen Titans, Crisis on Infinite Earths, as well as Blade 2, Blade Trinity films, and more recently, Justice League Doom. He's also the creator of comic book characters such as Bullseye for Daredevil and Hannibal King's The Blade.
Starfire.
Okay, and then next to him, we have Clare Kramer, you may know as Glory from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But she is also worked with many... She's worked with major studios and independent films. She holds a BFA from the New York University's Tisch School of the Arts. She's also the writer of TV series Take 5, and she's executive producer of Pigs, The Grim Sleeper, Take 5, and Tweet Out. This is a very active young lady. And we have Andrew Robinson, who's also working for the Kaijudo story editor, Riding Duel Masters, but he's also written some other very popular IP, including Transformers Prime, Green Lantern, the animated series, and Young Justice. Please welcome all of our panel guests. So I think to get started, why don't we just start with your experience in the industry? What kind of established stereotypes have you dealt with regards to females? We'll start with Neil and head on down.
Well, since I originally created this panel about 5 years ago, because of my experiences trying to pitch an animated series, which became my novel later, Red Riding, to the animated studios. Taking something in that's an action-adventure series with a female character lead apparently is very difficult in animation. There's a lot of we love girls and we love that they watch our shows, but we don't necessarily want to create stuff specifically for them unless it's, My Little Pony or Barbie or something. But an action girl show, they're like, yeah, that's great, but, can we make it a boy? So and I got even that with Red Riding. Can we make Red Riding a boy? We'll call it Red Wolf. It's like, what? Okay. And they're like, but then that's not Red Riding, so that doesn't work. And you're like, yeah. So I mean, that's sort of what inspired starting this panel, which I started at Long Beach Comic Con about 5 years ago, and there were only about 6 or 7 people at that panel. So the fact that this room is full at San Diego is, I think, a big deal to me. So that's really, let's start there and let everybody else talk. We're all talking right now.
Hi, my name is Mairghread Scott, and I write a lot of what is literally known, the industry term as voice action. And I just like tremendously that it was actually called voice action. But I tend to write a lot of robots and action shows, and we deal with a lot of different kinds of female cliches in that. And we hope to overcome sort of, the classic Laura Croft, I'm perfect at everything, but I don't want anything, and, when I'm not kicking bad guys, I'm just kind of standing in the closet. But even that character has actually, I love that character now. Like, now they actually reinvented her, which is amazing. And you've seen that on the action side grow by leaps and bounds. My latest comic work is Transformers Windblade, which is a miniseries. Oh, thank you guys. Which is a miniseries that focuses around 2 female Transformers that fans actually created the main character. They voted for her. So you're not just seeing a shift in how executives feel about women in writing. You're seeing real vocal push from fans to include more diverse women in each brand.
I think pretty much almost from the beginning of my career, I've always tried to push for female characters. Back in 1972, 73, with Tomb of Dracula, one of our characters, Rachel Van Helsing, was an incredibly strong character. And I don't mean, physically powerful, but she was a character that the stories pivoted on very much. And then to create new Teen Titans characters, we were the first comic group that had an equal number of male characters and female characters. Previously, it was all like one female character in the group. And you look at Fantastic Four, and it's a book I absolutely love, but the female's character power was to turn invisible. And that was a major character. And her name was the Invisible Girl, even though she was a full adult. Continued with that when I was at Disney. I was the founding editor of Disney Adventures magazine, the small digest that you could find at the supermarkets and everything, and ran it for the first 4.5 years of its time, and tried to start and actually bought a female-driven series about 4 young girls in Wyoming. And it was their adventures and their stories, and it was wonderful. And unfortunately, even though we had something like 4 or 5 stories finished, we weren't allowed to publish it. Not because of Disney, they did it right up front, there was no problem with Disney, but it was an advertiser-sponsored magazine. And that's when I learned that the stories that we did had to appeal to 70% boys, 30% girls, because boys will only read boy stuff and girls will read anything. They're not discriminating whether it's a boy or a girl series, but boys are. So we never published any of those stories, which was real sad because the woman who wrote it, Sarah Byam, did an astounding job developing for me. So it's something I've long believed in and continue to do even to today.
Hi guys. First I have to apologize, Leo. Thank you for including me in today's panel because I missed this panel at WonderCon. Because
it was Easter Sunday.
It was Easter Sunday and I have 4 little ones and I didn't realize it was on Easter, so it was, Nevertheless, we're here today. it's interesting because I'm not a big one on labels. I don't like to label my life. As a person and as an artist, I'm a series of contradictions. And so for me, it's more about speaking from my own experiences than kind of analyzing the industry. To me, I find that the more I analyze, the more of a hindrance it is as an artist, and the more it can, in a way, frustrate and discourage. So I was raised by my parents in a small town in Ohio to believe I could do anything. And I have not, you know, I've kind of lived my life and been an artist that way. So creating strong female characters, that's who I feel I am. That's who I surround myself with. And so that's what I like to portray, and that's what I like to lift up and elevate, not only, you know, through arts, but through the people I employ in my companies and with my own daughters. So I hope we can talk about that today.
When I was a little kid, there were a couple of TV shows on the air. One that come to mind
Just a couple.
reference to this topic.
Can you use the microphone?
One was I Dream of Jeannie, and one was Bewitched. And the irony that struck me even as a little kid was that you have these potentially extraordinarily powerful females who exist to fulfill a fantasy for the men in their lives. And it always struck me as kind of odd. I have 3 sisters, and I never got any kind of thing like that. And so, you know, little by little, I think popular culture and entertainment has made some strides. And, you know, I actually do think Buffy was a major turning point in how the general populace would see powerful women. So, and not the least of which is sitting here. And for myself, you know, in terms of the shows that I get lucky enough to be hired on, I'm trying to honor that notion that, you know, female superheroes should be super. The show that I developed for Hasbro, you know, you do have to work within the boundaries of what the studios and the networks are going to allow. So when they say boys action, you sort of have to give a nod to the notion that they want a male protagonist. But you know, in that trio, in that Hermione, Ron, and Harry trio, that's another, I think, another element of popular culture where Hermione is really strong, amazing, fully realized character. I tried to provide our character Allie to be like a heavy hitter and make her feel realistic, even within the boundaries of you know, kids' television, where we were talking about issues of single parents and bullying and empathy and doing that within the context of kids dealing with creatures from another dimension. So again, and I have a daughter, and I don't want her to have to deal with the sexism that has been, you know, all too much a part of the popular culture, and she's a fighter, and I want to, you know, put that forward. I want to honor that.
I mean, but with like Kaijudo, your female characters on that show, especially, you know, Allie, I think, you know, she was the most complex character on the show, you know, and I think she was the most fun to write.
Definitely.
because she was so strong, and she had some amazing moments, you know, where she would walk up to a god, a titan, and just be like, hey, get over here, I'm gonna set you straight, you know. And I got to write that on the episode I did, where she walks up to a titan, you know, and it's like, get out here, you know, we gotta talk, call off the invasion, you know. And she's like, how dare you, you know. It's like, and I think, you know, what you got to do on that show was rare. And hopefully, you know, we will open the door to do more of that stuff and not have the girl have to just stand behind the boys and go, what do we do? You know, and the more of that we can do, the better. So, but, you know, watch that stuff, buy that stuff, you know, if you want more of that, let them know, because they won't learn until you teach them.
We were lucky enough to actually have not just, we had a great female villain character as well, who was, I think, fairly complex and realized. But a couple of female mentor characters. There's a show right now called Steven Universe, which you guys may or may not be familiar with. And I think it's fantastic. I mean, you never see, it's a little kid who is sort of overly enthusiastic, and he has 3 female mentors. First time I've seen it. I think we're making great strides. There's certainly a lot more to go, but we're making progress.
So I'd like to ask the panelists, how do we get past those hurdles? What can you do as writers and creators to do so?
Well, there are a couple of things you can do that you try, depending on where you are in terms of writing. I know in pitching, often the rule of thumb is ask for twice as many women as you want, so that when you get half that, you're at what actually you're okay with. But the first thing is, one thing that I try to do is just the constant reminder of, can this character be female? There's a special lack in animation of background women. I think there's like a poll that like you watch an animated movie, just the crowd is like some freakishly like 30% women or less, you know, and it's just people walking down the street. So it's very important, I think, to be like, well, can random pilot number 4 be a woman? Can the cashier be a woman? Can this person be a woman? Like, just to keep asking that question. I think the other really important thing is, and one thing that I really like to do is to push essentially negative traits in female characters. I feel like there's, in sort of the 90s and the early 2000s, there was the rise of sort of the perfect woman, the selfless woman who could do no wrong. Part of that was because you only had one woman in the group, and if you have one woman in the group, nothing can be wrong about her, and if nothing is wrong about her, then nothing is real about her.
But she has to be like the personification of everything that's awesome. Everything that boys like about girl. So she's a bikini model, and she knows Kung Fu, and she went to MIT, like you, and you know, she got her when she was 12.
Being a schlub, and
Yeah.
but she's also perfectly fine with just with taking a backseat.
Right.
She's all about the team
And her dad taught her
sacrifice.
how to build race car engines.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No. But I always thought it was very important to, you know, we had a character called Miko on Transformers Prime. It was a character I really took under my wing, and the thing that I loved most about Miko that I thought made her so unique was the fact that Miko sucked at a lot of things. Like Miko is a 14-year-old human girl who finds herself in the middle of a war between two story tall robot aliens. And Miko decides this is awesome. Like, this is the action movie that she always wanted to live in, and treats it as such. Being a 14-year-old girl in an alien war with two-story tall aliens, she is not actually able to fight in any kind of effective way, but so she's always failing. And at first that was like, oh, we don't know if we want to do Miko or push Miko, but the fact that she was willing to get back up and keep trying and fail again and try again, like she wasn't good at everything. So we actually, over the course of 3 seasons, I built a very deliberate arc where Miko was able to go from a little girl, it was basically just this impossible dream, to actually accomplishing that dream and being able to fight toe to toe. And there's something about having a character that's not perfect from the start, but watching a little girl actually earn that I feel is so powerful for women viewers.
No, I agree. The thing that I've always tried to do is first come up with what's an interesting character with all the flaws. Sort of going back to the early days when I first started. The character has to be human. They have to have the flaws. They have to have the problems. They have to have everything. Then you can decide, is this a woman character, is it a male character, is there a reason it matters one way or the other, what can be done with it because of it. But you need an interesting character, and the problem is, so often when you're asked for, when a female character is created, they immediately put on all the traits that they assume are the traits that a female character has to have, rather than a character who's a human being. And what a female character should be. Think of them first and foremost as a human being with all the flaws, foibles, problems, screw-ups, absolute mistakes as anyone else. Then work out what makes them unique for a female character, why that same character would be different if it was a male character. But you start with the human side and then you move to the gender side.
So you don't end up with the team of girls where it's like, she's the smart one, she's the pretty one that likes to shop at the mall, she's the one who knows math, she's the one who can drive a race car, and then you end up with those cliche character teams or something, So, but I mean, honestly, after going through this Red Riding thing with networks for 3 years and getting beat up, really beat up hard, and having them suck everything that I loved out of it, just to try to pigeonhole it into what they wanted, and then they said, the marketing people said, girls won't buy it. So ultimately at the end, I just went and wrote a book, and I did it exactly the way I wanted it, and I published it on my own, and people end up loving it, and it's done very well, and then people are demanding the sequel, and I'm working on it. But ultimately, if they won't let you do it, then just do it yourself, and show them that this is what people want. Now I'm talking with network people who are interested again, because it's a successful book, So if they won't let you do it, seriously do it yourself. You're in the age.
Now, see, there's actually one thing though that I'm going to disagree with you on that. Only because I feel like a lot of times we'll get up on panels and say, if they won't let you do it yourself, and that's a real. Sometimes I feel like that's used as a cop out. It's like you can't go off and write Wonder Woman and start publishing your own Wonder Woman comic, and DC's going to be like, yeah, that's great, thank you so much, and start collecting royalties on there. Like, that's not going to happen.
That's great.
Exactly. But at the same time, as fans, I don't necessarily know that not everyone is interested in creating their own female characters, but they still desire to consume that. And I will say that you can still, even if you're not out creating your own characters, you can still advocate with your money and with your voice effectively as fans. So for example, the character I made, Windblade, she was created by the fans through a series of online polls. You got to vote on if she was going to be an Autobot or a Decepticon, on a plane or a car, or whatever. There was no option for gender. And a group of fans got together, they started a petition, they sent to Hasbro, they had an online petition saying, we would like you to give us the option of, is it going to be a guy or a girl? And Hasbro actually responded, put that up as an option, and girl won. And so it is very important for you not only to spend your money effectively in terms of buying things that actually support female characters,
Yes.
that support female creators, but that you are very explicit in your interactions with social media. I am doing this because I want more of X. I've been in a dozen, every time a movie comes out, the company, we've all been there, the company gets a marketing firm, they break down exactly what people did and didn't like about the movies. There's a lot of things that are wrong or weird in that, Like, don't let the companies guess, oh, they didn't see the Wonder Woman movie because no one likes Wonder Woman. Like if you're not going to go see the Wonder Woman, you need to say, I'm not seeing this movie because of X on Twitter.
The traditional things in movies is if a movie star is a female character fails, it's a female movie that fails.
Yes.
If it's a male movie that fails, it's just a movie that fails.
Yeah.
Yes, Electra fell because it was a girl.
Right.
Not because it was a
movie
movie.
failed for other reasons.
Yeah, exactly. Two different arguments.
Yeah.
Same problem. So.
I'd love to hear from Claire and Andrew with regards to kind of the turn of the conception of women in television, particularly with Buffy, like you mentioned, Andrew. Could you guys talk about that?
I feel like there's more content available in film and television now for not only our generation, but the young generation with strong female characters than there ever has been before. If you look at TV, you look at Homeland, Game of Thrones, even poor Lori on Walking Dead, bit it, got bit. Battlestar. To me, it's not about, well, if they say this, then you do that, and blah, that doesn't work. It doesn't work in life just to get frustrated and move away from something that frustrates you. I feel like we have made a lot of progress, and by...
Did you see Frozen? A movie called Frozen?
Frozen.
We've made progress.
That just proves that ice movies are super in. Kids love ice.
Kristen Bell and ice.
We need more ice movies.
But, I don't know exactly,
Charlotte Fullerton, everybody. She likes singing. We love it.
Claire's absolutely right.
This is, oh, I'm sorry.
Live action, particularly, television, it's exploded in every way, and particularly, I think you're seeing some amazing, it's not just that they're strong female characters, they're so complex, they're so marvelous. Downton Abbey, where, in theory, the head of the family is the father, but and I'm addicted, and the interactions between the sisters, it's brilliant television. It's amazing, and 10 years ago, maybe you could have done something like that, but no, I think right now we're in a golden age for all kinds of stuff on television. They're writing characters that are deeply flawed and deeply sympathetic and great sense of humor.
very complex.
Yeah, I think the hurdles that we still have to overcome are more in the kids' case, ironically. And we are making some progress, but we certainly have more to go.
Charlotte, what do you attribute the change when you say nowadays?
I think there's more female writers. I think we have 3 times more venues that need to fill programs.
Viewers.
And
Yes.
viewers, you guys vote with your ratings. You guys vote with your pocketbooks, your wallets. And that's, ultimately, the audience will determine what succeeds, not the showrunners. So, what seems to be happening is you guys are enjoying what you're seeing.
Well, on that note, last year I submitted this panel and did not get a response. This year I submitted this panel and we have, how many people in here? So, it's really about, I think, people voicing out what they want and spending their money. Wherever you spend your money, that's where the people who sell stuff are going to go. So they're a little slower at figuring it out. So, but this is obviously changing. Comic-Con would not have let us do this last year.
I think also,
I don't know, there's a lot of panels, so I don't know if Comic-Con would have not let us do the panel.
There were not that many last year. So.
I think in terms of television, if you go back and look and analyze it a little bit, it was essentially originally 3 channels, 4 channels at most, most of us had, which meant the decisions were made by a very small group of guys, because that's who ran TV in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Now we have hundreds upon hundreds of channels, almost all of which are doing original programming. They're not limited anymore in the same way, because you now have everybody is, male, female, in charge of networks, in charge of programming, in charge of everything. So the fact that it's more narrow casted, you don't have to appeal to 50 million people. You can actually now start doing things that people want to see, and then we choose what channels to watch, because we now have more than 3 channels.
Marv, I have a question about that, because I know not you and I, but in general, a lot of us folks have a conversation about, nowadays, things like the abuse tactics. It's been 60, 70, 30 years. Yes, there are people in this room who are adults who have children who don't remember a time when they were only
We're talking about the history of TV, not necessarily. There were very few women shows. The women shows were essentially intended for soap operas in midday. Afterwards, the assumption was made that guys controlled the dial.
Because they did.
Now, excuse me?
Because they did.
individual people can be catered to a little bit differently, which means if they started to notice that a ton of people are watching Lifetime, they're watching movies that have dramatic content for women, the networks, the three main networks go, oh, that show got 5 million people. We should do one of those. So by the narrowcasting scripts, it does fit. But we're there now.
Well, I have to say that's also, and I only say this because I used to intern at the program planning department of several major televisions, when I worked for a company that worked with Nielsen and stuff like that. So some of the reasons that there's been a bigger push for advertisers is literally the buying power of a woman under 40 has increased so dramatically in the last 30 years. It's not just who controls the channel, but it's who picks out what car you buy, who buys the washing machine, who buys the high-ticket item that is going to be sold on that channel. And that's why, you know, how many TV shows are, you know, attractive woman, late 30s, profession, you know, mild work.
You can even tell by the way that the commercials that are produced who they're aimed at, where it's not, you know, scantily clad woman lying across a sports car. It's a family, or it's a woman, you know, or whatever, you know, she's on her way to work, and she's driving this, you know, nice car that they're trying to sell. Certainly black middle class and upper middle class families, it's been wonderful to see. Only been in the past 5 years that I've seen home electronics, and I mean, it's getting off subject for women, but home electronics ads and you know, more, but they're
Marketing
targeting. It's not a white family that has money to buy this fancy new car that lives in the suburbs. It's a black family.
No, yeah, well, isn't that new luxury sedan? And the ad, it's like influenced through history or something. It was all about like this trend stuff, and at the end, it's this African American couple who have a white servant who's waiting for them, like to take their bags. You know, I mean, of course, that's one.
So you guys are making some really great points. So it seems like we're doing better in television, we're doing better, hopefully films and like, but let's bring it back to like, how are we doing in comics then? How are we doing in novels? What do you think about that? Yes, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Here at the end is Charlotte Fullerton, and So let me give you a short list of what she's been involved in. So Ben 10 on Omniverse, Ultimate Alien, Alien Force, My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, Duel Masters, Power Rangers, and let's not forget Care Bears for the Rescue. So, but you do bring up interesting points. I mean, how are we doing in the other media venues? What do you guys think?
Well, has everybody seen you Batgirl costume?
Woo!
Yeah. And it's a huge step forward. Maybe she doesn't agree. But
No, I mean, like, look, the Batgirl costume is a huge step forward, and that's great that someone thought through a superhero costume. But at the same time, that doesn't, and I think this might be where Charlotte's frustration is coming from too, but I get the sense that it's like, oh, this one thing is good. So
How are they going to treat her? How are they going to?
well, but not just how are they going to treat her, but it's like one decent Batgirl costume does not negate
It doesn't.
Entire.
Yeah, the fact that I think at this point, what are there? DC has like a dozen or more, like 6 to 8 straight up Batman titles, and there is only one Wonder Woman comic. Exactly.
Well, and that's kind of what is expected, is the focus is then put on, look, but hey, look, we did this. This is happening now. This is happening. Well, that's great, but you guys, you know, it's all about like taking any momentum and the momentum from yourself and in your own career and living forcefully and, you know, executing change.
But also too, it's about not
interesting female characters that I've seen on TV in recent years, not kids, in prime time. It is a prime time soap opera, but I still like it. Once Upon a Time, where they have female characters, because there's so many of them.
But that's Jane Espenson.
You know, this is, you know, the women, yes, it's soap opera, and they love the so-and-so, and the triangles and stuff, but the whole level test, that they actually have conversations about something else. You know, whatever the storyline is, whatever it is they're trying to sort of connivingly, and the men are conniving to the bad guys. And it's kind of wonderful to see them treated as individuals, as women. They're not written as men, and as their own character. You know, some of them are petty, some of them are, loyal, some of them, and instead of having what you were saying that in Marv was saying, I think, when you have one, the woman that has to be everything to all people, and even as a writer, you have to be super careful about offending anybody, with any minority character. So you can't write a character.
I never worried about that, to be
Really?
honest.
Oh,
I never.
that. Wow.
As I said, the female characters, some of the female characters were heavily flawed that I wrote back when I even began. And I think I wrote some of the first ethnic characters who were villains as well as heroes. Because I had Blade on one side who was the hero, and I had other characters who were the villains because I didn't care. There was nobody telling me I could or could not do it. My feeling is anybody has a right to be a villain and a hero. So it didn't matter what race, what
I apologize.
To that end, by the way, if you guys like the new Batgirl costume, go buy the comic. Go support Gail Simone's.
Actually, I think you need to go back one step. I don't care about the costume. If Batgirl is a great character, the new Batgirl, support that because then they'll keep that team on the book. Because these books, all comics, having done it for at least 3 weeks now, are based on if they're bought or not bought, and if that doesn't work, they'll bring in another take. And if the new Batgirl is something that really works, support it. And then they'll try, well, maybe we should do, which I always push, Raven as a comic, and handle her as a real character again.
How long do they usually have as a window, with a blockbuster movie that doesn't open
Well,
strong?
you need, these days it's a lot different than in the past because you know your sales beforehand. You print what's ordered plus a little bit extra. So it could be very fast. Generally, they'll give it at least 6 issues or 8 issues. And to me, it takes 6 to 8 issues for people to even know it's out. So I always thought that it should be at least a year, minimum. But it depends on how well other books at the company are doing and if they like the title. If they like the title, they may give it a little bit more, give it a couple more issues to catch on. If they don't like the title, even if it's great, they won't let it live long enough to catch up.
Yeah, here's the dirty secret about comic book sales. You buying a comic book at a comic book store does not actually influence comic book sales if you just bought it off the rack. Essentially what happens is comics are the number of comics they're going to print of that book is based on pre-orders that happen through Previews magazine. It's how many the store thinks they're going to sell. So unless you are telling your store that you are going to pre-order it, it's however many the store thinks they can sell, however good they think the comic will do. So essentially, I know at other companies, it's, you get 6, you might even only get 4 comics. Your comic book sales numbers, your initial sales numbers, for the first 3 issues will already be written before issue 1 hits shelves. So if you want to advocate for a book, if you really want to get your voice heard, you have to pre-order that book. You need to go to your store and make sure it's on your pull list, because stores normally don't go back and just, if they sell out of however many they got, that's great. If they have leftover, that's bad, but if they sell out however many they got, that's not necessarily, oh, next time we'll get more.
Yeah,
It's,
most comic shops are based on the concept of no returns
Mhm.
for the company. So if they print 30,000 of a comic book, it's because they probably know that they have 29,000 sales that are guaranteed, and they just want to have some extras to send out, whatever. So you're absolutely right. What you need to do is support a book by ordering it in advance, because that will up the number of books the store will order. Those are already pre-sold, so you have to get the pre-sold books sales up, and not worry about always buying it on the stands. Also, a lot of shops don't have the money to put books on the stands. They will only buy books that are pre-ordered because they know that they're already sold. So one of the biggest problems you have is you may not find a book on the newsstand or on the comic shop because they're not ordering for the shelves, they're only ordering for their customers who are pre-ordered. So you have to be pre-ordering it to get those sales up.
yeah, now things are changing and getting a little different because of comiXology and because publishers, but the one problem with comiXology is that those numbers are actually held in confidence with the publisher. So only DC knows how many people are reading any individual DC title. So that's not something that people can use to advocate for more female titles.
Talk about that also, what you order online, and how does that?
It helps the publisher will know, and they track it, and they're very aware of it, and they're very
It enables some small books to do well, because if you're ordering a lot online and it's not selling all that well in print, it still may sell out because they are getting the orders. It's Verso always has a problem of the monthly books never did all that well. It's been phenomenal. I can barely hear myself.
Yeah, I hate to interrupt, and because this is getting into really fascinating territory, but we only have a few minutes left, and I really want to open it up to the floor for some questions since we have all these wonderful people here. So, sorry, you had your hand up?
So, this was only touched upon a little bit, but you talked about the creative process of creating titles of panels, creating awesome female characters, creating strong female characters. It's only, Mark talked about it a little bit, but you kind of walk us through that process of what you do, especially for a male writer who isn't female, hasn't gone through a lot of the emotional things that female characters have gone through growing up, a person has gone through growing up. Kind of talk about that process.
Big
It's a big question.
Who wants to take that one?
Well, I tend to write a ton of male characters, older men and everybody in between, and I've never done any of those. I know a lot of them, and I have a good imagination, and I pay attention to the people around me growing up and all. So it's not magic. You don't have to bend outer space to write about outer space. You don't have to bend to be the only one to write about it. We're not that foreign in terms of I have I don't want to dominate here, but I have an anecdote from my late husband on the subject. He and I had a long conversations about this, and I attribute it to myself, if you read, that white men in particular who grow up to be writers are actually at a disadvantage. You've heard me say this before, Andrew. He said he doesn't think that when white guys who are working as writers say, I don't know how to write female characters, or I want to write, minority characters, but I don't know how to do this. He said, I don't really think they're lying. I think that they haven't had the lifetime of experience up to this point that the rest of us have of putting yourself into the shoes of the other for all entertainment purposes. Your books and movies and everything had a lifetime of, I watched Star Wars as a little girl. Luke Skywalker's the lead. Yes, I dressed up as Princess Leia for Halloween, but when you're watching the movie, you identify with the character going through the hero's journey. And, Harry Potter, I'm more like Hermione in terms of academically and personality and all, but Harry Potter's the chosen one. So this idea of we all have an advantage so used to having to see through another character's eyes, a male character's eyes, in order to have entertainment.
I probably agree with you about 40%, but I think if you live at all and you have the slightest bit of empathy and you deal with other people, you see what their problems are, and you see what you
The projection.
Well, we're all geeks, so we're ready on the downside.
So we only have a minute or two.
One more question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear from the panel.
Oh, that's the
Hey, sorry. Oh, we got a question.
No, I'd like to hear from the panel why you think it's taken us so long to make the minimal progress we have when the Japanese figured this out decades ago.
See, that's a false question though, because even though the Japanese media is still hyper-segregated.
They are, but they still have, there are loads more entertainment options geared towards women, written by women. And, you know, I mean, they recognize, at least at the very minimal level, they recognize the capitalistic force at play there. The women are willing to spend the money they want to read, right?
I was going to say, what do you think?
Because like you alluded to, I mean, you know, in a lot of aspects, Japan is still a very sexist society, so I don't really know why that is. But it seems to me particularly in comics, you know, I mean, you've had strong female characters in manga and anime, you know, before I was born, and that was longer ago than I ever fit, right? So I mean, I just don't get it. I'm kind of, you know.
I think it's
Because we're a money-driven society.
I think that, you know, in the 40s and 50s, there were a lot of female writers in comics. And for some unknown reason, the comic publishers, and there were female writers and female editors of the companies that all of them, but they decided that the women preferred the romance comics, which were the most banal, type stories you can imagine. And then they slowly died out. And to be quite honest, the superhero stuff at that time would have had very little of interest to anyone who was a better reader. And we don't have any better readers than boys. No, this is a fact. Boys generally don't read as much as women do. And so boys were primarily reading the comics, the superhero comics, which meant they started to cater the stories more towards that audience than to the girl audience. Now what's happening because of independent books that don't have to sell 50,000 copies, they can sell 5,000. You can now get a lot of the other type of titles, and slowly then the big publishers go, because their sales have increased from 500,000 down to the same 40,000, 30,000, whatever. They'll start going, well, let's do this now. So it always starts with more of the independent type of thinking process, and then it enlarges to incorporate everyone else.
Sorry to turn this into a panel, but he's got the experience behind it. Much more than we do, and just seen it play out over time. Do you think that part of the problem is that comics or any media that has women in it is aimed at women viewers as opposed to viewers? And
That's what we were talking about at the very beginning.
yeah, and that's something in and of itself is very just as marketing.
As opposed to just good stories.
When I was younger, teenager, going to a comic store or a comic convention, I mean, there were far less women. You know, the number would have been 8 to 1, 9 to 1. A comic shop was rare to see a girl in the comic shop. A girl would come in and be like, what's going on? You know?
Yeah, I know that because men used to follow me.
Yeah, exactly. A girl came in there, and I was like, what's going on? There's a girl in here, and I'll get stupid. You know? So I mean,
Yeah, it made me feel super
so I
well.
mean, this shift of Comic-Con being so incredibly diverse changes, I think, everything. You know, it's like everybody's here, everybody's being represented, everybody wants to be represented, and showing the industry this is a huge shift. I guess
We have to stop, but thank you very much for